Now moving on to the bed framing portion of the build. So the wall framing is complete, the vertical framing is. I can't yet put in the actual walls because I am waiting on 100 more square feet of the wool. So I'm moving on to stage 2 of the process, which is the bed framing and cabinet framing. And it's kind of frustrating. I'd rather finish one stage before moving on to the next, but just missing a couple pieces of the puzzle to finish stage 1. So I've rented this miter saw from Home Depot that I'll be using for the cuts. And then back there you can see the 2x3s that I've got from Home Depot that I'll use for the framing. I'm gonna go for something that I'll talk through my thinking, just so maybe it could help with any builds that you may want to do in the future. But I'm gonna make the bed just tall enough to go over the wheel well and line up with this horizontal beam. The reason for that is my van is not a van that you can stand in, and I'll be doing a lot of, when I'm hanging out in the van, I'll be doing a lot of sitting, and I need all of this vertical space for the upper half of my body when I'm sitting so that I can comfortably sit straight up in the van. So for that reason, the bed has to be pretty low, and that'll be in contrast to the countertop. The countertop will probably, like the butcher board, will probably be somewhere in this area, a little much higher, 12 inches higher or so, because I'll be using it to type or I'll be using it to cook. So it's going to be a little bit different in terms of height. I'm going to start with the bed framing on this side, and ideally what I put together is, today's goal is probably just the skeleton of the frame, but eventually the vision is that the bed frame comes out to the wheel, and then that's the first portion of it, and then anything that extends past the wheel is on a hinge that I can then lift up for storage reasons. So the reason that I don't want that hinge up flush against the wall is because right at the piece where it will hinge for storage, I want to insert the back of the bed. So it's a bed slash couch. And then that backing, ideally that leans up against the wall here, then goes in the galley when I am not using it in couch position. It goes in the galley. So I don't think I've done a good job of explaining that, frankly. I am kind of thinking out loud about it, and hopefully I can articulate that vision and then show it to you so that makes sense. But that's what I'm going for right now, and I'm gonna fire up the miter saw, get my initial cuts rolling, and start putting it together. So again, kind of a bummer. I've been joking with my dad, I feel like a general contractor. Once you have one piece of the puzzle missing, it can halt the whole thing, and that's how delays happen. And so because I don't have the rest of my insulation, I've got to move on with another project because I'm off from work all this week, and I've just got a lot of free time on my hands, and I want to make the most of it. So frustrating that I couldn't wrap up what I have classified as stage 1, but also exciting that I am moving on to some of the actual living space. Just wrapping up day 2 of bed framing. So now I've got almost the initial skeleton put in, and I'll try and depict what my vision is one more time, so hopefully it makes a little bit more sense now. So this is the initial frame here, but then there's going to be a piece on top of it that hinges at about the wheel well, and it's going to be a door that opens up so I can access all of this for storage. I think I said yesterday, but my priority was to make sure that this bed was a little bit lower than the countertops so that I could sit down comfortably, and I think I've achieved that. You can see obviously I carved out a spot for the wheel well, but did pocket holes all around. It's kind of funny that I didn't know what a pocket hole was 2 weeks ago, because this entire van is going to be, all the framing is going to be built using pocket hole jig. So really secure, which is great. So it's getting there. Made a lot of mistakes. This turned out great, but there's a graveyard of all these cuts that you see right here are mistakes. Just measurement mistakes, pocket hole mistakes, changing the depth of the pocket holes, changing the angle at which I approach the wheel well. Like, just so many things that I'm sure somebody with more experience would know how to avoid, but just going into it with pretty basic woodworking experience, just making some basic mistakes, which is to be expected. It's a lot of 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but it's fun and I'm enjoying it. And each time I learn something new, and at first I'm thinking to myself, why isn't this working? And then an hour later, it's clear in hindsight, like how could I have been so, how could I have thought that? So yeah, it's getting there. Pretty proud of it. And it's not secured. That's another big important piece. I am not going to secure any of this framing, might have already mentioned that, until the walls are done. So all of this I could just pick up, pull out of the van. So that'll be good for when I'm doing other projects. So tomorrow's work is going to be on building out the door portion of it and trying to figure out how exactly that hinge will work. I'm on day 3 of the bed framing, and I realized even after closing yesterday's video about the mistakes I made one more mistake. So this is what I'm going off of. This is a bed frame, a screenshot from this guy's YouTube channel called Outdoors Embrace. I think his name is Ryan, and he's got a Ford E150, which is what I drive. And he's got this concept that I've explained the past couple days, but I made a mistake. I essentially made this side these little 6-inch connectors here. And I made these 6 inches too. But what I failed to realize in this image is that when this connects, this doesn't connect flush up here to another piece of wood. This connects flush to a connector, which means this connector is shorter than this connector. In other words, I needed to go back, rip out that right side that I have, take all of these off, and make them 2.5 inches shorter so that this will connect flush to this connector, and then laying on top of that is then the opening door. So the guy from Outdoors Embrace doesn't release his exact schematic, so I was just going off of the screenshot, and I just missed that detail. So the reason why, and you might be asking yourself, well, you could have just corrected the mistake, just make these a little bit higher, because I hadn't installed these yet. So I could have made, you know, it looks like in this image, he's got these at 6 inches and these at 3.5, which is what I'm going with. But I could have kept this at 6 inches and kicked this up to perhaps, I guess, 8.5 inches. Well, the reason I'm not doing that and making it 2.5 inches higher is because of what I said. I like that exact height, just above the wheel well. When I'm sitting right here, I can sit straight up. So it's a height issue. And I came here today thinking, okay, I'm going to work on this framing. You can even see I started working on this framing on the left-hand side to complete this box here. But it was when I started looking at completing this box, I realized, oh, that's not gonna do. So I will, I'll screw these in. I just made the cuts here. I haven't actually screwed these in. I've got all the pocket holes ready. So I'll screw these into the board, then flip the board over here, screw these back into the frame itself, and then hopefully if I've got then a 6-inch piece right here, then hopefully the top of the board I'm about to attach will then go flush, not into here, but into this connector. Day 3 recap. So the beam you see in the back right here is, this is a 6-inch connector. The beam right here you see is a 3.5-inch connector. So these are now 2 different heights, which will allow for the door to rest right here. So the door will be connected over on this side, actually a little bit, it'll actually be connected right there over the wheel well. So it'll be a beam right here at this same height, and then it'll hinge and it'll rest right there. And the reason I had to make it lower on the right side here is to allow for the door to rest right here. So you live and you learn. Like I said, I'm not going off a schematic, I'm going off of just a screenshot, and it wasn't until I had pieced things together that I looked at it and said, this is not right. And I couldn't go up with it. I need that space for my upper body when I'm sitting down doing work at a desk or cooking. So I had to unscrew all these connectors from both the base and from the top here, cut each one individually, cut 2.5 inches off of it, and then drill new pocket holes. Not the end of the world, but not how I thought I was gonna spend day 3. So tomorrow will be day 4, and hopefully I can start to get to a point where the framing portion is done, and then we can work on the door. Day 4 update. I've got the top of this bed frame on the left-hand side done. So a piece of plywood will be secured right on top here, and I'll use a nail gun to secure that. And then next up is working on the actual door portion that I've been talking about the past few days. So I probably won't get it on a hinge today, but I'll probably just build this box here, and then once I get the plywood nailed down on this piece and then on this individual door piece, then it'll hinge on this piece of wood here. Day 4 recap. So it was a good day today. Got these support beams in, connected this side beam that runs along the length of the van, connected it here. All these pieces you see here in the middle on top, got those in today. Got the door, right now it's clamped so it's not moving, but this will hinge right here. This is where the hinge will go. So I know I've been trying to explain that the past few days, but now it's kind of coming to life. Again, it's clamped because I'm about to drive. I've got to throw out some scrap wood and some boxes from materials, and I didn't want this door flying around, but you can see a little bit of movement there. and it's gonna lift up for storage reasons. So I'll get these cross beams here. Tomorrow I'll extend them over the wheel well. Those are just small 8-inch cuts there, and then I'll do pocket holes, same thing. It's really nice that this thing's starting to get heavy. There's a lot of wood here, but it is really nice that it's not screwed down so that I can continue to manipulate it so that I can get good angles on the pocket holes and whatnot. So it's coming along. I'm pretty pleased with how it's turned out so far. The next step after the 8-inch cross beams here is then to get the plywood staple gun down on. It'll be 2 individual pieces of plywood, 1 strip here and then 1 for the door, so that when it's laying flat, it's as if it's 1 uniform piece, but it still does bend, so I can access storage here. So pretty pleased with it. And I'll start thinking about framing the cabinets tomorrow, because I want to think about how much space I want to leave for the galley. I have a rough estimate. I've actually got my measuring tape here, so I'm gonna go ahead and see actually. So it looks like I'll be leaving maybe about 16 inches for a galley here. So that's not bad. I mean, that I can fit my foot in there, and so like if I'm kind of on a keyboard or something like that sitting down, I'll be able to comfortably rest. And then the end plan too is if I can, 16 inches. Then the bed could potentially extend to be about 48 inches or 4 feet wide, because my end vision is the back of this couch / bed will then be able to drop into this galley. I can like pick it up, remove it from a little slot, and then if the cabinets have a little runner and this has like a beam here, then I can lay it down, or a beam here rather, so that then the frame sits here and then it's flush on this second piece. And then in the galley, that would allow me to have a bed that's about 72 inches long, which is good because I'm 6 foot, and 48 inches wide. I don't know exact measurements for conventional bed sizes, but for a van this size, to get a bed that long, that wide would be phenomenal, while still having that galley, while still having that multi-purpose function that allows me to do work, that allows me to cook. So that's going to be a challenge, getting that function together, but I think it's going to be well worth the effort, because it could be pretty powerful. All right, that's it, day 4. Today's build is going to be kind of chillier than most. Actually, it's not too bad. It looks worse than it is just because there's snow on the ground, but I have been working. It's probably like 28 or so out right now, and that's mostly what I've been working with. Once you start moving your hands, moving around, it's not too bad. But I've got those 2 cuts. That one right there matches up over there. That's 11 inches wide, and then the one under it is 20 inches wide, and that'll go right here. I've got the hinges ready to go, and I'll screw the pieces of plywood into the frame. One concern, I mentioned it previously in another video, is starting to add weight to the van. I had pulled weight out when I ripped the previous cabinets out and the previous walls out, but I'm definitely going to end up adding, it's going to be a net gain of weight, because I'm doing some more substantial builds here, particularly with the bed frame. So that just means when I move on with the cabinetry over here on the right side, I'm gonna work to try and keep it light. So maybe instead of working with 2x3s, work with 2x2s. Maybe I don't need 3/4 ply, maybe 1/2 inch ply for some of the shelving. So that's starting to be a concern, but it's a gorgeous day out and I'm looking forward to jumping in. Got my little heater here. We're using propane, just make sure you crack a window. Working inside today because we got that outside. Also, by the way, my neighbor has a VW van. So right across the way from where I'm converting my cargo van, this guy has his classic, I don't know what year it is, maybe early 70s, don't know. But his name's Rob, he's a great guy. He comes over and checks in on what I'm up to when I'm building. But today, we're building inside, but I got light, I got heat, we're good to go. Yeah, it's getting hot enough where I gotta take the sweatshirt off. Shout out Mountain Sky Guest Ranch. This is the vintage gear. I actually, just looking at this, just came up with, this might be helpful for someone else. Smaller pieces clamped right now. I just screwed in 2 1/5" screws to opposite ends. So now that board is secure. Now I'm gonna clamp the larger board and just do 2 pilot holes and 2 screws on corners for this so that that board is secure. And then I'm gonna do the hinges. I will do the finishing pilot holes and screws. Like, there's gonna be more than 2 screws in this board. You know, there's gonna be probably, I think I said previously 5 each side. I don't know, I haven't thought through that. But I don't wanna start drilling pilot holes, do all that work just to find out I've gotta adjust it, move it because it's not working with the hinge. I'm gonna get the hinge up, excuse me. I'm gonna get the hinge operational first and then do the finishing touches. And small little tips like that I've learned in this build go a huge way, because you're, I don't know, 1/4 inch off down here, but it carries. Then at the end of the board it ends up being your 3/4 inch off or something like that. The problem grows as the angle increases on a board, so it can really, one small change can really screw things up. So oh baby. Oh baby. Yep. Yes I did. Darn right I did. Just gotta get a hinge. Woo! that pretty much wraps up this video. The one additional step that I did take with the bed frame was that I used this tried and true finish. It's an all natural finish on the bed frame. I wanted to go with linseed oil and beeswax so that I could bring out the grain in the wood, but also make it water resistant, because I knew that I would be taking this van to humid climates and that it would be getting a little bit of wear and tear on the road. So we'll take a look at what this beeswax and linseed oil did for the bed frame itself. Looks pretty good here. Started to get a little bit more of like a caramel color to it. And this is just sand plywood, so there's not a lot of grain to bring out here because it's all just been sanded down. But I went on to really love this specific tried and true finish. And I think initially I just bought a pint. That's what you saw in the previous picture. I went on to buy a gallon of it, and I still have some extra. It's a little bit pricier, but it was nice, and I got to use it instead of like a polysynthetic, which is cool. Nothing against a synthetic finish, but something about me living in this space, it being so contained, and also really wanting to bring out the natural grain of the wood, really encouraged me to go with this linseed oil and beeswax. And like I said, if you're willing to pay a little bit more for it, I can't recommend it more highly.